Good day, radio listeners. Welcome to this week's edition of the Pure Sex Radio broadcast. We're so glad to have you here with us. My name is Jonathan, and we're really excited today because we have a special guest on the line with us, Kristen Jensen. So, Kristen, how are you today?
I'm great, Jonathan. You know, any day I can wake up and reduce the casualties or help reduce the casualties of the porn industry is a great day.
That's excellent.
So it's great. Today.
That is good. Well, and before we dive in to what Kristen has to say, listeners, I just want to remind you that we are a listener-supported broadcast. So the only way that we're continuing to do these podcasts and get them delivered all around the world is through generous partners like you. So if you want to learn about the ways that you can come alongside and partner with us in this ministry, simply go to puresexradio.com and click on the donate button. Now, Kristen, why I'm so excited to have you on the program is because you really get this in terms of how to help young people, and so, and I mean really young people, and help their parents. And so, I'd love for you to share with our listeners why you decided to write a book about pornography for young kids. Doesn't that seem like out of place? I mean, why would you write a book for really kind of a 6 to 12-year-old age group?
That's a question I get all the time. And so, yeah, I'll tell you, it really, in the end, it's because God asked me to write the book. But how it happened was I met a woman who was a mom, had a large family. They were very religious, went to church every Sunday. They were homeschooling their kids to protect them from the world, you know, from the influence of the world. But unbeknownst to them, the world had come into their home via the internet, and their oldest son had become addicted to pornography, and then he had begun to act out on his younger brothers and sisters. And so there was a huge fallout from that, and one night she just needed someone to talk to, and she told me her story, and the next morning I just couldn't get the thought out of my head that this boy had been sexualized from a young age and had found pornography from a very young age. And the more I looked into it, the more I realized how many young children were getting exposed and pulled into pornography when they were so young, elementary school age, way before their parents were even thinking about talking to them about pornography and the dangers of pornography. So I just felt compelled to, first of all, look for a resource, and when I couldn't find it, to go ahead and write it myself. And I knew that I had been given an assignment.
Well, now
so
that's not exactly the assignment that people wake up and say, "Oh, I want to go do that. I want to take on this task of trying to write something about a very involved and layered and difficult topic that a lot of adults don't even understand fully and know how to manage well." And now you're being tasked with, let's deliver a message that's helpful to kids. How did that feel to sort of launch into that kind of a project?
Well, let me give you a little background. Years before, my friend, Dr. Gail Pointer, who helped co-author the book, she had started her practice and was dealing with many clients who had sexual addictions. And she would tell me about how bad it was in pornography. And I remember specifically saying, "Okay, Lord, you know, I just can't help you with this one. I don't want to go there. And I'll do something else," right? And I just think that when you say that to the Lord, you're giving him a personal challenge.
Right.
Because I said, I don't want to have anything to do with pornography. It's just sickening to me. But that morning when I woke up, I don't know, I think he just gave me the heart and the desire to do it, and changed my heart when I realized how it was hurting families.
Yeah.
So after that, I started looking into the science. We're kind of science nerds in our family. And I started looking at how it affects the brain and how it can become an addiction. And I thought, children can understand this if you can simplify it. enough, and it took us 3 years, so it was a daunting task. But we got a lot of feedback from parents. We did a lot of beta testing. And in the end, I even get feedback from counselors, from therapists who deal with adults that say they use our book, Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, to help adults understand the process of addiction.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you too, is, we kind of I just sort of launched us right into this about a book for kids, but so who is it really for? Is it for the kids or is it for the parents?
It's for both. So our book is really written as a tool for parents to use to open up that conversation with children. And we wanted to make it easy and comfortable. And it seems almost impossible to do that with, such a difficult topic. But we just start with a mom talking to her son about good pictures, right? Good pictures that we love and that remind us of our friends and family and the good times we have with them. But then she says there's also bad pictures. And it's called pornography, and I'm going to tell you what it is. She gives a simple definition, and then she also tells him what it can feel like. It can feel like the pull of a giant magnet because, you're just so curious. So in that first chapter, which we probably rewrote that chapter more than any other chapter in the whole book, it models a parent talking to their children. And Jonathan, I've received so much feedback on how this conversation was such a positive, bonding, even spiritual conversation with their child. Even though pornography is... I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, isn't it interesting how usually what is blocking the conversation is not the difficulty that the child will have with the conversation, but it's the difficulty that the parent has with the conversation.
Right.
It seems to me every single time that I've heard, like when I shared with my own kids when they were young, and from parents that I've heard that will take the courageous step to then engage that conversation, you rarely get a kid that says, you don't get a 7-year-old that goes, oh my goodness, I don't really want to talk about this. You get a kid that says, really? Well,
right.
Tell me more. What are you talking about? The kid is very open usually to talking about this. It's the parents that have to kind of get over their own shame and their own brokenness and be able to step into that conversation.
Yeah, and most parents are surprised at how then easy it becomes and how good and positive it becomes, because we're the ones that give our kids the context, right? If we're feeling shameful and embarrassed, then that can keep us from talking to our children, but our children don't know anything about it, especially the younger they are, the easier it is. So if you start with a 7-year-old or a 6-year-old, then when they get to be 13, you've opened that conversation, you've continued that conversation, and it's all good, and it's positive, and there's an open dialogue, and it's the way it needs to be, because the porn industry isn't shy about talking about this stuff and getting in front of our kids. We can't be shy either. We have to be bold and courageous, and parents can do it.
Now, I'm sure you've gotten this from a lot of parents in terms of this idea of their own hang-ups and their own fears and certainly their own failures. I mean, none of us get to adulthood without having some kind of exposure to sexual brokenness. And it's at all kinds of varying degrees to what we can be exposed to that. But I'm sure a lot of parents, there's a lot of fear that maybe on its face seems very legitimate. Like, well, if I start talking to my 6 or 7-year-old about pornography, isn't that just going to make them run faster into pornography? Like, how do I keep them from, that's probably a legitimate fear that a lot of parents have, is thinking, if I introduce this topic, am I not actually inviting them into doing something harmful with pornography, when maybe I should just wait until they're 13, 14, 15 and then talk about it?
Right. Well, you can wait, and that is a choice, but you're choosing is basically to let the internet and their friends teach them about sexuality, teach them about pornography, and you're missing the chance to be the first one that gets in there and gives them values and a way of looking at it and a plan. So we encourage parents to provide three things for kids. One, a basic definition of what pornography is so they can recognize it. Two, a warning about how it can become an addiction and how it can, and the effects it can have on you, the dangers of it. And third, a plan of action. What do you do when you're exposed to it? What do you do when someone shows it to you? How do you respond, and how do you deal with that? So we say you want to get in there and be the first one. Mm-hmm. You want to be able to, because you do not know when they're going to be exposed to it. You have no idea, and you may never know, because if you don't open this conversation. I've just had many parents tell me, and I get lots of feedback that says, we started reading the book to our kids and we found out then that they had seen some things.
Sure.
And so we're so glad that we finally did. But getting in there and being first, the risk of them running to see pornography versus at least now they have a warning about it and an open conversation, and you're saying, hey, if you have questions, if you're curious, come to me. I will try to find those answers. We'll work on it together. And otherwise, you're taking a big risk that your child is going to be exposed, going to see something, and not going to know how, or even if they can come to you.
Exactly.
To talk about it.
Well,
you open it.
In some ways, I think about that fear that parents have in not wanting to talk is similar to what we see sometimes in a husband who says, "Well, I'm not gonna tell my wife about what I'm struggling with because I want to protect her." And it's kind of the same irrational thinking, which is saying, "Well, I want to protect my kids, so I'm not going to talk to them about the dangers in the world, or I'm not going to talk to them about the struggles that they might have." It's really pointing more to that person's own brokenness and fear than it is to actually dealing with the situation. I think in the same way, a husband, listen, if you're going to deal with your issues, you've got to talk to your wife about it. If you're going to actually protect your children, you have to talk to them about it. Otherwise, you're kind of throwing them to the wolves of the culture, and they are merciless. They're not going to show your kid any mercy when it comes to what they could be exposed to. I wanted to also ask you, because this is probably, I know we've been kind of talking about 6, 7 years old. Why is it so important to, you've got kind of a range for this book, sort of this, is it kind of the 6 to 12-year-old range is kind of the target of the audience you're shooting for as far as the age of a kid? So, and you mentioned that starting earlier is better. But now I can imagine the parents out there going, well, how? And what I'd like to do is point back, because we're on radio, a lot of people, you got to say things 2 or 3 times for it to really catch. I'd love for you to go back to this kind of 3-pronged idea that you have of the definition, of the warning, of the plan, and maybe help parents a little bit more along the lines of the how to. Like, okay, how do I do that? What words do I say to my kid to kind of get this ball rolling in a way that becomes kind of healthy, like you're talking about?
Yeah, okay, I'd love to. First of all, I want to just say that one of our most requested second books is for preschoolers, 3 to 6, because they're getting on iPads, they're getting on their parents' phones, they're going to kindergarten and seeing things. And so we are actually working on a younger book that is much simpler, but again, just gives that simple definition. So let's get back to the three things that I think that parents need to provide for their children. One is this definition. When you define pornography, and I like to use the word pornography because let's own it, right? Let's own it. Let's not be scared of it. Let's own this word and say that we have power over it and bring all this out into the light of day Because when we bring it out into the light of day, our kids have power. And when we keep it in the dark, the porn industry has power.
Right.
So the first thing is to provide a simple definition. Obviously, that's what we've tried to do with our book, Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. But you can also just do a simple definition like pornography is pictures of people with no clothes on that focus on the private parts, the parts of your body that we cover with a swimsuit, the parts of our body that we want to keep covered and keep private. So keep our private parts private, and we're not going to look at other people, pictures or videos of other people that are exposing their private parts, and we're not going to ever take pictures of our own private parts and send them to anybody. So now you may want to not talk about that till they're a little older, but I know the stories I hear of young children getting involved with this, I think they can handle it. Sure. I really do. So just a simple definition of what pornography is. You don't have to go into all the scary stuff when they're young, just so that they can recognize it, have a name for it, and know that they can come and tell you about it.
And wouldn't you agree that idea of the definition can also kind of dovetail in with just an appropriate conversation about modesty at that age when you're 5, 6, 7, that there is a transition that occurs, from a little kid that likes to, run around naked before he takes a bath every night.
Yep.
And then guess what? He's got 2 sisters. Well, you're 5 years old now, and there's just a modesty conversation, and that's a great way to dovetail maybe into also the conversation about the things that you could be exposed to, and we need to keep private parts private and all of that.
Yeah. And the other thing about this is that it helps protect children not only from getting into pornography and pornography addiction, but it helps them from sexual abuse from other places. So when you have these conversations young, you're empowering your children. When you teach them the names of their private parts and you're not afraid to say those names, then it's all good. It's really empowering to kids to have that working definition of pornography, and also then to understand that pornography the reason we don't want you to look at it and I keep it simple. In our book, we kept it very simple. It was all about hurting your brain. We don't want to hurt our brain. We want to take care of our brain. And we have 2 brains, the feeling brain and the thinking brain. And the thinking brain is the part of the brain that knows right from wrong. So that's the part of the brain we need to keep in control. And that's the part of the brain that needs to make decisions about what kind of pictures to look at. So we talk about it in kind of a mental health, brain health kind of a way, and it's pretty matter of fact. So it's very helpful, I think, to give children a reason for why they need to protect their brains from viewing pornography and give them that vocabulary to use.
Well, and you know what? It's interesting because I think one of the things that I have discovered over the years of being in this kind of ministry as a Christian is that, listen, while I may have my primary motivation for wanting to be pure as a moral motivation, that is not the only motivation that we can have for being pure. And I think sometimes the simplest way that you can describe this to a kid is exactly what you're talking about. Listen, there are things that are healthy for your body, your brain, and there are things that are unhealthy for your body or your brain. And I mean, there's hardly a human on the planet that's not going to understand just the difference between the healthy and unhealthy. And so you're putting it in very simple terms that I do think is incredibly important for the children, but it's also really instructive and helpful for the adults as well, because some people just automatically reject anything we might say if we start from a moral position. But if you start from a position that says we're all humans, aren't we? We've all got a brain. We've all got bodies. And there's pretty good research that says these things are detrimental to your health, not just the moral aspect.
Right. And we wrote this book. We're believers and Christians, but we wrote it for everybody. And I had a few people saying, you need to mention God in this. You need to make it a moral thing. And I'm like, and I actually prayed about it. And I felt inspired to keep it simple and keep it available for even the children who are not growing up in homes that have a gospel orientation. So I have a lot of confidence in parents. They can teach their religion. They can teach their values, their religious values and the Bible and all that, but they have a hard time talking about pornography.
Right.
So this resource is not to replace all the other spiritual drawbacks and problems that pornography brings, but it's just to help parents begin that conversation about pornography at a young age where it can really make a difference. And so to do that, that's what we're trying to do. We can't do all the rest, and parents can do that very well for them, for their children, but we're just trying to help them where it has been a little more difficult.
Yeah, so we have this definition of pornography that's important to give to your children. Also, this warning that this is something that can become dangerous in an addictive sense and cause you to get kind of wrapped around it in unhealthy ways. And then finally, you have this plan of action. Why don't you help our listeners, our parents out there that are going, yeah, what do I do? What's the plan?
Right. So it's one thing to tell kids, okay, this is what it is, and this is why it's dangerous. But now we have to give them a plan of action. Now we have to tell them how to deal with it, right? So we have in the book the can-do plan, and it starts with, it's CANDO, and it's very easy for kids to memorize and to recognize. And so if you want, I can just run through that very quickly.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so C stands for close your eyes. So the longer you look at pornography, the more it burns into your memory. And so we want to avert our eyes as quickly as possible and turn off the device, and then always tell a trusted adult. So A, always tell a trusted adult. Come and tell your parents or your teacher or whoever is taking care of you. Come and tell them what you've seen. Pornography addiction thrives in secrecy, so we want you to come and tell us. Then N is name it when you see it. So in the book we talk about the feeling brain and the thinking brain. When you see pornography, your feeling brain is alerted, right?
It's lit up.
You see that? Yeah, it's lit up. It's lit up, right? So in order to get the thinking brain online, we need to label it. We need to say, that's pornography. And so now it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's pornography, and I know what I need to do. Turn away from it, go tell my parents. So we need to name it when you see it. And then D and O, so those are the things, the CAN, those are the things you do when you first are exposed. But then afterwards, kids, they have memories, right? And these images make very powerful memories. And they bother the kids. They come back to tempt them. So the D and the O part of the can-do plan are the parts to help them deal with those memories and to minimize them. So D is distract your thoughts. So when that memory comes back, as it will, and it's not that they're bad kids,
right?
It's just the way their brain works, right? So we need to kind of, and that helps reduce the shame, too.
Exactly, yes.
Like, you're not bad, you're just normal. You're normal. So you're going to probably remember this. This is going to pop back up in your mind. So what do? Well, you're going to think about something else that's really exciting to you. And for each child, that's going to be different. So if a child is really into cars or horses or chess or whatever that they love, they need to go and in their mind start doing that, or they need to get up and physically, get out of their head and get into their body and do something physical. But they need to learn how to distract their thoughts away. And what this does is it actually rewires their brain. It builds a new neural connection away from that picture and starves the connection that goes to that picture. And then the other one is order your thinking brain to be the boss. We talked a little bit about the thinking brain, how that's where we have our ethics, that's where our morals are, and that's what needs to be choosing the right, and choosing right from wrong, and choosing to not look at those pictures, even though you might be really curious.
Right.
So we teach kids the can-do plan, and in fact, we have a really nice poster of this plan on our website, which is Protect Young Minds. But if people have a cell phone, they can text can-do plan, so all one word, can-do plan, to 44222. So that's can-do plan to 44222, and we will send them a copy, a PDF that they can download of the can-do plan for their kids.
And listeners, we will have that on our website as well, so you can get access to that. Kristen, we have about a minute left, and I would love for you to let listeners know some other ways that they can get some of your materials, how they can get the book, and just how they can get connected with your outreach.
Yeah, so we have a website called protectyoungminds.org, and we have 3 free guides on that website. One is to prepare and prevent. The second one is help and healing. If you found that they're already involved in this, what you can do and how you can respond. And then the third is if you want to get out there and help your community, we have some resources there if you want to get this message out to your community, your church. We also have bulk buy. You can get our book for your church. Sometimes churches like to order them, and you can contact us through our website for that. Also, you can get the book through Amazon. You can go to goodpicturesbadpictures.com and get it through there. And we are a best-selling book on Amazon. Don't like to toot my own horn, but it's really been very well received. So we're grateful for that. We're grateful to talk to you, Jonathan. I'm so grateful that I can help get the message out to, and just help parents.
Yes.
Help parents make this connection with their kids and empower them to reject pornography and keep it out of their lives.
Well, Kristen, we are grateful for having you on the program. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's been a pleasure.
And listeners, we're glad that you were with us as well, and we look forward to having you back here again next week on the Pure Sex Radio broadcast.
Pure Sex Radio is paid for by Be Broken Ministries. Visit us online at puresexradio.com.